Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're doing a deep dive into Chapter 1 of our source material, Foundations of Business. We're going to unpack the hidden mechanics that literally power our commercial world, taking a fascinating journey from the broadest of human needs all the way down to the specific, complex engines of modern enterprise. So, let's get right into explaining the chapter and figure out what actually makes the economic world go round.
Seriously, take a second and just look around the room you're in right now. Have you ever wondered how all this stuff, the device you're staring at, the shirt you're wearing, the chair you're sitting on, how it actually got into your hands? There is a massive invisible web of activity making it all possible. How does something go from being a raw material buried in the ground to a finished product sitting on your shelf? Well, that is exactly the puzzle we're going to solve today. Here is our roadmap for this explainer. First, defining economic activities. Then, distinguishing between business, profession, or employment. Third, classifying business activities. And finally, what drives a business. All right, let's jump right in. Section 1, defining economic activities. Okay, so at the most basic level, every single choice we make falls into one of two buckets. On one side, we've got economic activities. These are all about earning a livelihood. Think of a doctor operating in a clinic or a factory worker on an assembly line. They are exchanging their time and skills for financial survival. But then on the flip side, we have non-economic activities. These are driven by totally different engines, things like love, sentiment, or sympathy. A parent cooking dinner for their family or someone helping an elderly person cross the street. There is zero financial motive there. The payoff is entirely emotional and social. So, where does business fit in? Well, it sits squarely on the economic side of that crossroads. But here's the catch. It's not just any economic activity. By definition, a business has a very specific dual pursuit. Yes, it absolutely involves the production and sale of goods to earn a profit. But, and this is absolutely crucial, it has to do so by satisfying human needs in society. You literally cannot have a sustainable business without both. Profit is the engine, sure, but satisfying human needs, that's the steering wheel. Moving on to Section 2, business, profession, or employment. Now, this is where it gets really interesting because the trade-offs of how you choose to work become super clear. Think about employment. If you get a job, you generally need zero capital, right? And you carry almost no risk. But your reward is a fixed salary. You're essentially playing by someone else's rules. Now, pivot to a profession, like becoming a lawyer or an architect. You need highly specific qualifications, maybe a little capital to set up your practice, and you earn a professional fee with moderate risk. But then consider business. Starting a business requires capital investment, actually requires no strict minimum educational qualification, and it embraces high risk. The reward? Profit. But that profit is inherently uncertain and irregular. It's the ultimate risk-to-reward calculation. Let's break this down further in Section 3, classifying business activities. The commercial world basically splits into two massive, totally interdependent buckets. Bucket number 1 is industry. This is the making and extracting engine. It's the production and processing of goods and raw materials. But here's the thing. Making a brilliant product is pretty useless if it just collects dust in a warehouse. And that is exactly where bucket number 2 comes in. Commerce. Commerce encompasses the whole shebang of complex activities that actually facilitate the exchange of those goods and services. To put it simply, industry creates the value, and commerce moves that value to where it's needed. If we zoom in on industry for a second, the absolute bedrock of everything is the primary sector, specifically the extractive industries. We're talking about things like farming, mining, lumbering, hunting, and fishing. These industries are out there pulling basic raw materials directly from our natural environment. I mean, before anyone can manufacture the latest smartphone or build a massive skyscraper, someone has to extract the raw ores first. They are literally supplying the building blocks for every single manufacturing industry that follows. And this creates a pretty elegant sequence that maps out the entire life cycle of commerce. A business always starts with step 1, production, which is handled by industry, but then it flows right into step 2, distribution and exchange. That's the realm of commerce, your transportation, banking, insurance, retail. And all of that heavy lifting, it exists entirely to reach step 3, consumption. Making the finished product reach the consumer to satisfy their needs is the finish line. If step 3 fails, the whole system, steps 1 and 2, just immediately collapses. Which brings us to our final part, Section 4, what drives a business? So let's look under the hood. To keep this massive economic engine running efficiently, a business definitely cannot survive on good vibes and ideas alone. To actually survive and progress, it needs to orchestrate a few critical drivers.
First up is productivity, basically getting the absolute maximum output from your inputs. Then you absolutely need physical resources, like plants and machinery, alongside the financial funds to keep the lights on. But hey, machines don't run themselves. That brings us to maybe the most vital component, a competent, highly committed workforce. And finally, in our modern world, strict efficiency and tax planning is essential because complex tax laws impact practically every single decision a business makes. To bring this all together, there's a really great anecdote from the chapter. A group of students are chatting about careers, and one of them is going off, super excited, saying business is just about making tons of money. Well, a successful businessman named Ragaraj happens to be there, and he steps in to wisely set the record straight. He points out that, yeah, profit is the reward, but the true impact of these commercial engines goes way, way beyond individual wealth. Business activities literally build nations. They drive the growth, that infrastructure, and the overall development of entire countries. So that wraps up our explainer. But I want to leave you with this provocative thought straight from the chapter's final exercises. We just established that profit is the primary reward for taking on business risk, right? Okay. But if that's true, why is it absolutely critical for a business to balance multiple different objectives, like social responsibility, worker satisfaction, and productivity, to truly sustain itself in the modern world? Think about how all those different puzzle pieces have to fit perfectly together so a business doesn't just survive today, but actually thrives tomorrow. Something to chew on. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep asking those big questions.